All right, let's talk about a phrase that probably makes your eyes glaze over: internal audit. But stick with me, because if you're serious about a career and strategy, you're about to find out why this is one of the most powerful and, frankly, most misunderstood secret weapons a company has. Let's dive in.
So let's just be real for a second. When I say the word audit, what's your gut reaction? Yeah, I thought so. It's not exactly a warm, fuzzy feeling, is it? It's more like, oh boy, someone's coming to look over my shoulder and find everything I did wrong.
Yep, that's the one. Your mind probably jumps straight to rigid compliance, never-ending checklists, and, those stereotypical bean counters from old movies, right? It all sounds so backward-looking and just, well, kind of boring. But what if I told you that picture is completely, totally wrong for the modern world?
Let's bust that myth right now. Just take a look at the actual official definition. Forget all that old stuff and zoom in on these words: add value and improve an organization's operations. You see, this isn't about looking backward and pointing fingers. It's about looking forward. It's about being a consultant, a partner who helps make the whole company smarter and stronger.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll look at what audit really does today, figure out who's actually responsible for risk, and then get into the auditor's secret playbook. After that, we'll see how they actually get things to change, and we'll wrap it all up with a super practical interview prep kit. Sound good?
All right, first up, what is the mission of modern internal audit anyway?
Okay, this mission statement is huge. It basically gives auditors two jobs at once. On one hand, you have protect organizational value. That's the classic stuff. The assurance, being the independent referee, making sure the rules are followed. But then you have enhance value. And that's where it gets really interesting. That's a consulting role. It's about giving advice and insight on big strategic things, like new tech or emerging cyber threats. So they're not just a referee, they're also a strategic coach for the team.
So you might be wondering, if auditors are providing this independent check on risk, who's actually handling the risk every single day? It can't just be them, right? You're right. And that's why smart companies use a model to make sure everyone knows their job.
Imagine the company is a giant ship. The first line, that's your crew on deck, the managers and their teams who are actually steering the ship and dealing with the day-to-day waves. The second line, think of them as the ship's navigator. These are specialists in compliance or risk management who are looking at the maps and checking the weather. And then you have the third line. That's internal audit. They're the completely independent inspector who reports directly to the ship's owners, the board. Their job is to make sure the sailors are doing their jobs right and that the navigator's maps are accurate. They check the whole system.
Okay, a big company has a million things going on. How in the world does an audit team decide what to look at? They can't possibly check everything. Well, they have a playbook for figuring out where to focus their energy.
And that playbook is called risk-based auditing. The name sounds a little technical, but the idea is brilliant and simple. Don't waste time auditing stuff that doesn't matter. Instead, pour all your resources into the areas that pose the greatest risk to the company's biggest goals. It's all about working smarter, not harder, focusing on the things that could actually sink the ship.
Now, to do this, you have to get your head around two key ideas: inherent risk and residual risk. Let's make it easy. Inherent risk is the raw, unfiltered danger. Think about driving a race car at 200 miles an hour. The inherent risk is, well, it's really, really high. Now, residual risk is the risk that's left over after you put in some safety measures, your controls. So, you put on a helmet, you have a roll cage, the risk is still there, but it's way lower. That leftover risk, that's residual risk, and that's what auditors really care about.
So this is how it all comes together. Auditors start with that inherent risk. How bad could this get? Then they test the control effectiveness. How good are our seatbelts? That tells them the residual risk. And here's the final, crucial step. They compare that leftover risk to the company's risk appetite, which is just a fancy way of saying how much risk are we willing to live with. If the residual risk is way higher than what the company finds acceptable, bam, that's a huge red flag. That's exactly where the audit team is going to focus.
Okay, so the audit team found a big gap where the risk is too high. Now what? Do they just write a boring report that no one reads? No way. To actually get things to change, they need to be persuasive. And guess what? They have a framework for that too.
It's called the 5 C's, and it's like a recipe for a perfect finding. You start with the criteria, what should be happening. Then the condition, what is actually happening. Third is the cause, why is it happening? But now we get to the most important one, the consequence. This is the so what. This is where you connect the problem to what leaders actually care about: money, reputation, safety.
If you can't nail the consequence, nobody's going to care. A powerful consequence is what leads them right to the final C, the corrective action, the fix.
All right, let's bring this all home. How can you use all this stuff to totally nail your next consulting interview?
Because look, these ideas we've been talking about, thinking about risk, looking for gaps, they aren't just for old school accounting. They're being used right now on the biggest challenges businesses face. We're talking about AI governance, making sure algorithms are fair. We're talking ESG, proving sustainability numbers are real. And of course, cloud and cybersecurity. This is where modern audit lives.
Okay, so if you walk away with just 3 things from all this, let it be these. First, internal audit is a strategic partner, not a police force. Second, their work is risk-driven. They follow the danger. And third, their communication is all about impact, using that 5 C's model to make a case that gets action.
All right, interview time. Let's practice. Question 1. The CEO you're talking to thinks internal audit is just a waste of money. How do you change their mind? You're going to want to talk about that dual mission, right? It's not just a cost. It's about protecting value today and enhancing value for tomorrow through strategic advice.
Okay, next up. A company's launching a new AI product. What are the top 2 risks you'd tell the audit team to check out? Remember, to think big here. Go beyond just, does the code work? Think about the strategic stuff, like the risk to the company's reputation if the AI gives biased answers. And for our final question, this one's a big one. Can you explain inherent versus residual risk and tell me why a leader should even care? The key here isn't just reciting definitions. It's explaining the so what. It's about showing that leader how to measure if their safety nets are actually working and helping them decide if the risk they're still facing is a gamble they're willing to take. Understanding that gap, that's what strategic risk management is all about.